Imagine for a second that your absolute greatest evolutionary survival tool, the very same ancient instinct that literally kept your ancestors alive in the wild, has somehow morphed into the single biggest roadblock to your own personal growth. Crazy, right? Well, today in this explainer, we're totally reframing how we look at fear. We aren't going to treat it like some terrifying monster hiding in the dark. Instead, we're going to look at it as an ancient, incredibly overprotective bodyguard, one that, honestly, just doesn't know when it's time to clock out.
And that brings us to a really fascinating question. What if the very thing keeping you safe is also making you small? Because think about it, human life has changed completely over the last few centuries. Plagues aren't routinely wiping out whole towns anymore, we have modern medicine, and we certainly aren't emptying chamber pots into the street. We've successfully neutralized so many of our historical dangers. Yet our baseline level of fear, it remains remarkably constant. So it really begs this provocative thought, what if the exact instinct perfectly designed to protect you from, say, a tiger in the brush, is now just slowly shrinking your modern day-to-day world?
Let's start by looking at Papa's perspective on fear.
To really lay the philosophical groundwork for our journey today, we need to turn to the wisdom of the newsletter's author, affectionately known as Papa. Papa, whose insights are often enriched by life alongside his spouse, Colonel Debs, and his father, Papa Q Bear, understands deeply how fear can completely paralyze you. But he suggests a pretty profound mental shift. He says, the next time that familiar dread rises up in your chest, trying to stop you dead in your tracks, don't fight it. Instead, just pause. Look at it from a little distance, almost as if you were watching someone else entirely. It's like taking a step back to create this gentle space between you and the anxiety. And that space? It allows you to observe the emotion objectively, without getting consumed by the panic.
This idea of gentle observation leads us straight into a brilliant concept explored by Dr. Frank Ferranda, known as the fear paradox. Basically, this is the phenomenon where fear, which again was originally designed just to keep humanity safe and comfortable, actually grows into the single greatest threat to our personal expansion, our connection, and even our collective survival. Because our baseline anxiety is still running hot in a relatively safe modern world, it relentlessly drives us toward avoidance, alienation, and this exhausting need for hyper-control.
So, let's dive into the psychology of avoidance. What physically and mentally happens when we constantly dodge the things that scare us? Well, imagine you're standing in a room, and every time you run away from a fear, the walls quietly inch inward. That's exactly what avoidance does. It teaches your brain that running away is literally the only safe path, and it slowly shrinks your world. Over time, that habit keeps your anxiety alive and incredibly strong. But clinical studies on exposure therapy show us a really beautiful alternative: building resilience. When we approach the things we dread in a gentle, supported way, it's like we finally shine a light on that monster in the room. And we realize it's much, much smaller than it seemed. We learn that we can actually handle uncomfortable feelings without breaking.
To really grasp what we lose when we let fear call the shots, psychologists point to something called self-determination theory. Now, instead of viewing this as dense academic data, think of it as the 3 basic psychological nutrients that we absolutely need to thrive as humans. First up is autonomy. That's our sense of freedom, volition, and choice. Second is competence, the feeling that we can actually master and handle the ambient challenges around us. And third is relatedness, our deep, meaningful connection to other people.
The harsh reality is that avoidance directly thwarts those basic psychological needs. When we retreat from our fears, we are basically starving ourselves of these 3 vital nutrients. We lose our autonomy, right? Because fear is the one making our choices for us. We lose competence because we stop engaging with the very challenges that actually help us grow. And we definitely lose relatedness because, well, avoidance naturally breeds isolation. The clinical data here is crystal clear. When these core needs are blocked, our overall wellness just crashes.
But let's pivot a bit and look at the growth compass. There is incredibly good news here if we shift our perspective. What if we stopped framing fear as the ultimate enemy and start viewing it as a compass? Just ask yourself, are you hiding behind a heavy shield? Imagine carrying a massive, heavy iron shield everywhere you go. Sure, it's highly protective, but it also completely blinds you to the world ahead. And man, is it exhausting to carry around. Now, some fears absolutely serve as wise warnings in moments of real physical danger. But a lot of the fears holding us back, they aren't true warnings at all. They're just heavy shields masking important tasks or conversations we've been avoiding. Hiding behind them keeps us feeling safe for a brief moment, but slowly closes the doors to a much wider, richer life.
It's actually a super common myth that people who grow and succeed somehow magically erase their fear before taking action. But the research shows that true resilience doesn't mean crushing every single hard feeling before you start. It means taking a step forward while your hands are still shaking. It's about choosing actions that lead to a stronger future rather than just settling for a quick moment of comfort right now. Taking action despite the fear is exactly what reshapes your confidence. It reveals to you what you can truly handle.
And that leads us perfectly to our final section, setting yourself free.
So how do we bring all of this together, Papa's philosophical observations and the hard clinical psychology, into something actionable? Well, here is your roadmap. Step 1, pause when the feeling rises. Step 2, observe the fear from a little distance, almost like you're watching someone else experience it. Step 3, ask yourself what is really behind that fear. You have to self-examine what is truly driving it. And step 4, act gently to build new strength. The scholarship on this is completely clear. Facing your fears for growth doesn't mean you have to push yourself to the breaking point. The most helpful exposure happens gradually. Gentle, repetitive steps matched with care are what build massive inner strength.
So the ultimate lesson of the fear paradox isn't some blunt, aggressive command to just blindly do whatever scares you. No, it's a much gentler invitation. Pay close attention to the fears that quietly shape your daily choices, because those fears, they often mark the exact spot where your next step forward is actually waiting. Avoiding discomfort might keep you feeling safe for today, but leaning into it with care is what actually unlocks your true autonomy and your highest potential. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one lingering question to chew on. What is truly driving your fear today? Once you pause and you take a look at it from a distance, you might just find that the very thing you've been running from is actually the exact key to setting yourself free.